Thank you, guys. Thank you all. So good to be here. And to be really honest, I'm very used to moving things, so sorry. No, it's fine. It's probably better if I don't. If you don't mind, I'm standing here bare feet. I thought it would be appropriate because we've been talking about Moses, and it feels a bit like holy ground here, so I thought I'll just take it off. No, but seriously, I love to walk bare feet, so I'm sorry for that. Hopefully I don't insult anyone. So my name is JW. I'm from the Netherlands, and Fuzi asked me to do a seminar. And when I think of seminar, maybe it's just me. I thought we would break out into small groups and we would sit with the people who would love to hear about that topic. So when I found out that I was actually speaking here and that you are all here, I kind of needed to adjust, at least in my heart, like, ooh, okay, that's slightly different. So hopefully bear with me. Hopefully I can tell you something new. But to be honest, talking about this topic of family and mission, if I look into this room, I feel overwhelmed because I'm not so sure if I can share a whole lot of new things. There are people here in the room who've lived it out. There are people here in the room who've done things or moved with family and been doing that for years. But still, I hope that I can give you a bit of a journey together of what we've been through as a family, and hopefully we can look at these things. And maybe if we have some time, we can do some questions around this topic. Is that okay with you? Good. Well, I would like to, before I go on, I would like to introduce you to my family, because I'm going to talk about family. And I wish they were here. So I have 3 kids and 1 beautiful wife. My wife's name is Melinda. She's standing right next to me. And she's been here in Dubai before, but this time she's an English teacher, so she couldn't come with us, with me. So let's start with Yanoa, my son. He is 15 years old. He's standing over there. And next to me is my daughter, Annalyn. She's 17. And then there's my youngest little one, Sifra, and she's 13 years old. So we, as a family, we've been on the move a bit. I think our story starts when I was a student. I lived in the Netherlands, and you probably know that in the Netherlands there's not a whole lot of tropic, but I decided to study tropical forestry. So don't ask me why. It probably was because I didn't know what else I wanted to do, so I ended up studying tropical forestry. And I had to do an internship. And because of that, I went to Indonesia. And I came there in a project where, in that project, it was right in the heart of Kalimantan, Borneo. And I went over there, I came in contact with a guy, Ronnie Hebur, and he had a vision to build, in the middle of the jungle, to build a village, a children's village, to get 1,000 children in that place, give them school, give them a place and a home. But when I was there was absolutely nothing. It was a 12-hour drive from the main city into that place. And the holes in the road were seriously this big that a car could go in there and you could not see the car. It was really, really remote. So the place was probably around the L of Kalimantan. That's where the project is. And as I was living there, I grew up as a Christian. I knew my things, but I kind of came from a background of a Dutch Reformed church. And that's not very charismatic. And here I was, finding myself in the middle of the jungle with a guy who had faith to see not a forest, but he could see children's house. He could see a church full of people. He could see lives changed. So I started asking him questions. How can you live a life like that? And there in Borneo, Jesus found me. And I was full of the Spirit. Something happened to me, and that changed my life completely. I got baptized together with my wife in Borneo. When we came back, my first response was, I want to go back. I want to live there. I want to give my life to this kind of work. But my wife was not ready. She said, no way, we're not going over there. So I became a youth pastor, a youth worker on the street. It was good. But a few years later, Melinda felt the call back to the mission. And she said, I think that we need to go as a we need to go over there. And I still remember us sitting on a bench in a park, talking about it and thinking, can we do this? Can God really use us? And it was a scary moment because we kind of knew. So now, if we raise our hands, it was going to change our whole life and our whole trajectory. It took us 2 years. 2 years in preparation. And in 2009, we left with a 2-year-old daughter and a 2-month-old boy. 2-month-old boy. And we left for Indonesia. We were house parents of 36 kids for a couple of years, living together. And then after that, we went to a different children's ministry, also in Kalimantan, where we were overseeing 140 kids with a local team. In 2014, our pastors from Utrecht, Jan and Anneke Stoorvogel, some of you might know them. Jan passed away last year. But Jan and Anneke came over to Kalimantan. And as good pastors do, they sat us down and they said, how are you doing? I don't know if you have people like that in your life, but I hope you do that. Just said, hey, how are you doing? What's God been speaking to you? What's in your heart? What do you really want? And when they asked those questions, my wife said, I think I want to go home to the Netherlands. And I kind of knew, but we were wrestling with these things, and it was like, what are you saying? Not here. So I started defending, no, we need to be here. This is good work. Look at what we're doing. Look at the fruits. We had a really good team. We built it up. It was good. That night I went to bed. And then God spoke to me 2 things. The first thing he said to me, how are you holding your ministry? Are you holding it like this? Or are you holding it like that? And I wrestled with that one. Because to be honest, I felt at home. I felt like this is the place where we need to be. But am I holding it like this? Or am I holding it like that? And then the second thing, God said to me, you know that for your wife to move to Indonesia was a huge sacrifice. Are you willing to do the same thing? And especially the last one, that hit me hard. Like, I know how hard it was for her to go through all these things, but am I willing to do exactly the same thing? I think that's what family should do, is look to one another, and we need to listen. And after that, we made the decision to move back to Holland. When we came back to a church which was almost non-existing. There were only 25 people left. When we left the Netherlands, we went with a church who was a thriving church in the middle of Utrecht, and we came back with only 25 people were in the room. And we were, as a family, with 5. So there was not a whole lot. But the good thing is they just found a family of churches to belong to, which was Regions Beyond. And I remember being invited by Jan and Anneke. Said, why don't you come along and get to know Regions Beyond? And I remember coming over here, and I was only back in the Netherlands for a couple of months, still a bit heartbroken, leaving the mission field, right from the jungle, and I was here in a hotel. And I sat there in that hotel room, and I was looking out of the window, and I could see, what's that building called? The Burj Al Arab. And I was crying. Because I thought, what am I doing? What on earth am I doing here in this city? I came out of a place of poverty, lots of poor people, and I'm sitting right here and looking at all these things and new people. What am I doing here? But the thing that I didn't realize at that time, the thing that God was doing, he was actually molding my heart for the local church, a heart for the city. No matter whether that city is a poor city or a rich city or whatsoever, God really needed to work in my heart, but there are still people in there who need the gospel. Why are you thinking that work over there in Kalimantan is more important than the work here in Dubai? And I realized I was judging. I realized that I actually needed God's love to feel like, hey, but there's people everywhere. So we worked hard in Utrecht, and actually I actually enjoyed being a pastor over there. I became the pastor of Hope Church. But Asia never left our heart. It was still in there, and I love to talk with my wife, and the both of us, we were always talking when we were away. One day we will go again. Last January, we were renovating the house. And that's not a good, normally you wouldn't think, but we were starting again to talk about the future. And we were painting our bathroom together, finishing off the good stuff. We were just finishing a massive renovation. And then she said to me, "When do you think we're going again back to Asia?" I said, "Well, we kind of said when the kids are older, when they leave the house." But then she said, "Which of the three? The eldest, the middle one, the youngest?" So she said, "Okay, but if we leave, when the youngest is out of the house, that means that the eldest is already, maybe she has kids already or a family. But I want to be with my grandkids, so that's not a good time." But if that's the case, what is the good time? And if we ask that question, why is it not today? Why is it not now? And that's where we started to realize, wait a second, I think God is moving us again. I think something is happening in our hearts where we need to say, "Hey God, it's time to raise up our hands." And we know how dangerous that is. If you start to say, "Hey, I'm on the move, God, maybe speak to us." So we started on that journey as a family together, and we went to Asia last summer. Together with the family, we visited Indonesia again and Malaysia, because we do speak the language, we speak Bahasa, so we thought one of those two countries, it must be somewhere there. And we felt as a family to call back to go to Malaysia, to Penang. We just made that announcement, and it's kind of dangerous if you go to meetings with Regions Beyond, because all of a sudden small things pop, and everybody's talking about these things and praying for you. But we are really excited to see our next chapter. So I would love to talk a little bit more about our journey. And I think there are some things that I've learned over the years which might be helpful for you guys to see mission and family, and the reason why I think that families need to move. Let me first say this. The reality of the call is this, that we are created in a family. God created us in a family. So right from the beginning, Adam and Eve, and what did God do? He brought them together and he said, "You might have children." A family is like the cornerstone of what God did on earth. He said, you must be family. And I think there is some truth in that. And I think in that you can see that God actually used that building block in society. You see everywhere the fingerprints of family. And we miss it out. We often don't think about it. We don't see it anymore. But throughout the whole Bible, you can see directly or indirectly family. Look at the Ten Commandments. It's pointing us to God. It's pointing us to one another. But in that one another, 3 out of 10 are talking about family life. Even if you look at the description of elders, if you look at the characteristics and how they are lived out, where is it lived out? In the family. So I think everywhere throughout Scripture you can see that God is actually using family. In Genesis 12, God gave promise to Abraham. And he said, "I will bless you so that you will be a blessing for the nations." And that promise that God made to Abraham, that involved family. He said, "Through your son I will bless you, and you will be the father of a multitude of nations." So, and you can see it all over. If you go to the New Testament, what does it start with? With the, I don't know, that's a difficult word for me to pronounce. That one. Lots of names, fathers, who go out and point out to Jesus. Family is important. And I think we often overlook that just being a mother, a father, a son, a daughter is actually really important. Because if the Bible is using that language, there must be a reason for that. And if that's so important, that might be a tool for us to actually demonstrate gospel truth. We were here having the global team meetings, and then we heard the news that the son of Steve and Heather was sick. So what did the mother do? She ran off to the hospital to be with the son. So what did the father do? He took off as well, and he went over there to be with his son. I think if we can see those pictures as gospel truth, we are actually demonstrating by just being a family what it is to be in God's family. So our family matters. That's the whole point that hopefully I'm getting across, is that I think that God uses family. So having a family night, spending time with your kids, is actually super, super important, because it demonstrates that you take care of that, what God gave you, and what God wants to use to get that picture right of a father and a son and being children of God. The second thing I want to look at is the urgency of the call. I think that God's heart right from the beginning in the Bible was right from the beginning to have a relationship with us human, with us men. He wanted to bless us so that His glory would shine on earth. Yes? That's what God wanted to do. So we all know that in the fall, Adam and Eve actually choose to turn away from God. But I think what the Bible is demonstrating, that God did not change. He still wants to bless us. So that's why in the Old Testament He said, you know what? I know that you turned away, but I will choose one nation and I'm going to bless them. And why do I want to bless them? So that all the other nations actually see and come and see and look. We want to be, actually, we are jealous. We want that same God. So God blessed it, that one nation, one people, one country, to be that central place. So Israel didn't have a great commandment. They didn't have that commandment of go out and tell the nations. It was more of come and see. That's what was demonstrated over there in the Old Testament. But when Jesus came, everything changed. There is no more geographic center. I mean, I think that Jesus' kingdom is not a physical one, it's a spiritual one. And all of a sudden it is not come and see, but it is let's go out and tell. So that's where we're in right now. Actually, God says, no, you are the light. You need to go out there. You need to go out and tell the story of Jesus. And that's why we are called to be sent out. And I think our job is not done. By far not done. I mean, we've heard now over these last days, yesterday, today, this morning, we heard about the unreached people groups. And I think the urgency of the call is still there to go out and tell. Let me just give you quickly. Oh, by the way, this was us over the summer, and we were in Indonesia with if you talk about unreached people group, every person that you see is from a different Dayak tribe. So the ministry where we lived, we had 140 kids. There were 30 different tribes with 30 different languages and cultures. They would have different costumes that they were. So we were there back celebrating the 25 years of that ministry. And by the way, there in that ministry that we first started, there are 1,000 kids at the moment. So I asked the founder, I said, okay, are you finished now? He said, no, let's just continue and to build. Unreached people groups. I think it would be good to give you a definition of unreached people groups. And there are lots out there, but recently I read a definition of David Platt. And he said, unreached peoples and places are those among whom Christ is largely unknown, and the church is relatively insufficient to make Christ known in his broader population without outside help. So what does that mean? An unreached people group or place is a place where there is hardly any church or Christians, and if there's no help from outside, most likely it will die. It will die out. It's not there. It's hardly there. And if you look at those figures, then you will see, and what you will see, actually it frightens me. That red line up there is the total amount of unreached people groups. 42% of the world lives in an unreached people group. The orange one, minimum reached, superficially reached, partly reached, comes up with a total of 75%. The green one, significantly reached, is 22% of the world population. And you know what? These numbers matter. Because these numbers are not just numbers. We are talking here about people. Can we switch off the lights, please? Or do the light thing? I think it's good every now and then to realize what numbers do. If you look at the people in the light, who are sitting in the light over there, that's probably the people who are reached, who are living in reached nations. Those people have the advantage to have churches everywhere, to hear the gospel easily, you can freely talk about the gospel, you can have events, you can be at Christian congresses, and you can talk about Jesus all you want, you can celebrate and worship freely. And here in this corner, you might have a bit of light. Maybe you are superficially reached, there are some churches, but this side here will never hear the gospel unless some of the people in the light over there go over here and say, I want to live right there in the middle of darkness. And that's the truth. We need to feel these kind of the truth about behind the numbers. I think there is a task ahead that we need to feel the weight of. We are privileged. Even being here, and I know we are in a country which is probably more on the dark side, we still need to hear these kind of truths, like if we are not intentional about this, those people in the dark will not hear the gospel. And also those people who are living over there, it's not easy to be light in the dark. I mean, meeting up with Gafar, with Danish and the family, to be honest, people from Pakistan, it breaks my heart. Because they live in places where it is very dark. It's not easy to have people around you, people to build you up. And we as a family of churches, we need to stand around these guys and say, hey, we acknowledge you, we honor you for being over there. We want to stand with you to say, hey, you need our support. We want to pray for you. We want to cry with you over all the hardships. A lot of people, when they ask us, why are you moving? One of the first things they say, but the gospel is also needed in the Netherlands. The next slide that we have is made up. All this content is, by the way, I just took it off from the website, the Joshua Project. So if you are interested in more information about this, you can go over there. And here you can see all the continents. As you can see, the second one is Asia. And I think Asia is the longest because the most people in the world live on the continent of Asia. But also it's the most red one, so the most unreached people groups are in that area. And if you look at Europe, there's actually a lot of orange and a lot of green. So I think when people ask that question, they need to look at the fact as well that in Europe, in most of the countries, yes, the gospel is needed. And yes, we need more people over there who do church, and yes, we need more churches planted in Europe. But I think the priority should be in the places where there's a lot of red to plant a lot more churches in those areas. And therefore, I think that as a family, yes, we need to be a family. We need a family on mission. We need to move as family as far as we can go to help to spread the gospel. Amen? But then the next question, or the next thing that easily comes to mind, is whenever we talk about moving, and I wrestled a bit with this one, because if I look at the room here, and here in Dubai, most of the people who are living in Dubai have actually moved already. So normally in the Netherlands, it's slightly easier, because people don't tend to move that easily. But you guys, you've moved already. Still, there is, I think, a difference if you move for the gospel or for your job. I don't want to step on any toes here, but and it's not comparing things, because I do think that you guys fully understand the weight of leaving family behind and leaving your home country behind, living in a different culture. So it's a lot easier for you to understand what it means. But I think there is something in it of people who are moving that they easily get questions. Why are you doing that? Why are you moving with a family, with a little baby and your little kids to a place where it's unsafe, where it's not, where there's no hospitals nearby? Why are you moving with teenagers? It's such a hard age. They have lots of friends, and why are you uprooting them and bringing them somewhere else? And what will happen is fear creeps into our mind. Fear creeps into our mind, like we're starting to doubt, is it a good choice? Is it a right choice to move with the kids? Can we do this? Actually, should we do this? I'm not a theologian, but I think one of the big mistakes is that we often think that fear is the opposite of faith. I have fear. And I do truly have fear of moving my family. But therefore, often we think I have fear, but therefore I have not enough faith to move with my family, is the conclusion. But I don't think that fear is the opposite of faith. I think going on a mission with your family must come with fear. Because I'm uprooting my family. Because we are leaving everything behind. We are leaving stability behind, and that's scary. I think that God said in the Bible over 100 of times, more than 100 times, do not fear. But what does that mean? Does it mean you cannot have fear? Because that's often the conclusion. I'm not allowed to have fear. And I think that's where we get it wrong. Fear is an emotion, and actually it's a good emotion. It warns you that things are unstable. It warns you like, hey, but I need stability, I need the safety. The big question with fear is, what are you doing with fear? I think that, Terry already said it twice. In the Psalms it says, when I was afraid, I trusted God. And then what was the next line? It was, I wasn't afraid, or something like that. Was it not? That's the real issue, is what do we do with fear? So fear in itself is not the enemy. It's not the opposite of faith. It should bring us closer to Jesus. The moment we experience fear, we should say to one another, let's go to Jesus. And I think we need to be very careful with this one, because we Christians, we tend to go often with the one-liners. Oh, you have fear, and then you help one another to, Isaiah 41 says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Well, actually, that's not helping. Because if we, those are Instagram posts. Those are nice, but not very helpful. Because fear is still there. And what happens is, if my fear is not addressed well, it puts shame on me, because I think maybe I'm not a good Christian. And then when I'm thinking that I'm distancing myself to those people who are up there and they're fearless, instead of, no. If we meet someone with fear, we should come close and say, I do understand. I do understand for the people in Pakistan and India that they have fear. And that's real fear. Psalm 22, it says the same word that Jesus cried out, oh Lord, why have you forsaken me? And I think those words are appropriate for people with persecution. It's It's right there in your face. Those fears are real. But then, what Jesus says is, I've been through that one. I've walked with you. I'm with you when you have fear. I'm crying with you. I understand. But let's go to the cross. And at the cross, Jesus said exactly the same thing, but I have gone before you. And I am with you all the way along. Amen? I read somewhere that at the core, fear is not a lack of faith, it's a lack of perceived safety. And I think fear should draw us back to Jesus. Jan Storvogel, I already talked about him. He was like a spiritual father for me. Last year, he passed away after a very short illness. But he showed me something in Psalm 23 which I will carry for the rest of my life. Because we all know that psalm very well. But one thing that he pointed out at one of his sermons, and it was about the rod. Now, the rod of the shepherd was used for many things. But he pointed one thing out. He said one of the things that the shepherd uses rod for is when the shepherd would go with his sheep through a very narrow passage where there are rocks behind, like everywhere around it, and it was very dark. At that point, the sheep could not see the shepherd anymore. So what would the shepherd do? He would get his rod, and then he would take it to the walls. And every time he did that, the sheep would hear, and they would know that the shepherd was walking right in front of everyone, of the sheep, and he would go first. He would step into the darkness, and he would go first, just to let the sheep know it is all well. And I think we need that truth. I think we need that one if we go on the mission, if we are fearful. We need to hear that knocking, like Jesus said, I know that you are fearful, but yet I have conquered. I'm gone before you, and I'm with you all along. Psalm 23 in the Passion Translation, I don't want to... Actually, I thought about taking it out because people have... I don't know. I like it, the Passion Translation, because as a foreigner, it's easy language. It makes it helps me to understand it well. It says this: Lord, even when your path take me through the valley of the deepest darkness, fear will never conquer me, for you already have. You remain close to me and lead me through it all the way. And your authority is my strength and my peace. I think it's a beautiful application of this one. Fear will never conquer me, for you already have. A couple of things I just want to point out now. And I think it's that I do think that we can count the cost of moving as a family. A couple of things I want to highlight about that is, first and foremost, pray about it. If you feel that you, as a family, you're on the move or God is moving you, I just want to encourage you, pray. I mean, it's basic, but we need to hear these kind of things like pray. Ask God to speak into it. Because we have our own emotions, ideas, and all that kind of stuff, but we need God to speak into it. I'm so glad of the message yesterday that we ended with, what's God telling you? What's God whispering into your heart? Because you will need it. When you go, you need to know where you're going so that God spoke to me on that time, and now I know that I need to move that way. One of the things we've learned over the years is that God speaks differently. So one time he would speak very directly. We had moments where God was, actually one time we moved ministries from one place in Indonesia to another one. We are wrestling with that choice. Because we felt like we were called to Indonesia, to that place. And especially just the burden of, no, we need to hold on. We need to persevere in this place. And right at that time, we went on a prayer walk. And I went to the left and my wife went to the right. And then there was an elderly woman. She was like a real prayer warrior. And she was walking around with flags and things like that. And yeah, she was a bit funny woman. But anyway, I don't know, can I say that prayer warriors are often a bit, but they're good people. They speak into your life. I shouldn't say that. Anyway, we were at that decision point, and I was going to the left, and Melinda was going to the right, and we were walking and praying and about that decision. And then my wife, she sat down at a certain point. And I came right across, and I was walking, and as I was passing her, I saw on the ground there was a word written. And the word was cukup. And for those who speak Malay, it means enough. So I came past her and I said, Melinda, did you write that in the sand? She said, no, I didn't even see it. I was just sitting here. And right at that same moment, that old lady with flags came by, and in Dutch she said, het is genoeg, which means it is enough. So I said, did you write it that? No, I did not. Scott was really clear on that occasion to us, and he really spoke to our heart like, no, it's okay, it's cukup. But at different moments, and even this move to Penang, we didn't have that same experience. One of our people from our core team said, but actually there's a lot of truth in that. God is not interested in you following orders or religious things, oh, you need to do this, and then you need to do that. But he is interested in relationship. He wants you to trust him and say, hey, I speak to you differently because I love you and I want to work with you. I want to journey with you. I want to bring you to new places. God loves to speak to you. So when I say pray, that's not just hard work. It's enjoy your journey with God. Start talking to him. Let him lead you to different ways. Second thing I would love to encourage you is to, I just changed it a bit, make space for conversations. And I think making space for conversation is so important. Even this room full of people, there's so much wisdom here in this room. If you think about something, please go out and just ask questions. Why don't you just step out and go to a person who you know have moved already? Why don't you go to someone from a different nation and try to have a conversation with that person, even if you don't understand? You have hands, you have feet. You can make conversation and try how hard it is to bridge language barriers. But we need to talk about these things. Let God soften your heart for a place. Let God speak into your desires and to your things, and who knows what kind of connections you make. And I just really want to encourage you to be boldly after making connections and try to have those conversations. Talk with your church leaders about it, with people who have oversight over you. They probably know places better than you. They can help you, to encourage you, to let you grow in certain areas. But first and foremost, talk about it around the dinner table. I think we often mistake that we can't. I think that we should include our kids in these kind of conversations. I honestly, and you work it out the way you think it's best, but I think that we need to journey together as families. So we've been talking about missions always. So if we now, with this move, actually we were a bit scared that they would say no. So we took them to a restaurant, and we thought, well, that sounded bad. Actually, we didn't. There was a reason, because my daughter said, there was a reason why we took them to the restaurant. We thought it was a nice occasion to ask that question. So we kind of said, what would you guys think of if we would move again? And all of them said, we would love that. And that for us as parents made us, okay, that at least we can move. So when we went to Indonesia, we said, guys, we want you to know this is not just a trip. This is something that might open up things. So can we just pray for it? We gave them books, like a small booklet. Write things down that God wants to talk to you about. What are your fears? What do you like? What do you not like? It helps to move as a family. I think our kids, they don't have a smaller Holy Spirit. They have voices in it. We're on the move together. So have conversations with your kids about these big things. Do your homework. And with do your homework, I mean there's lots of things you can prepare beforehand. If you think God calls you to the nations, go and learn a language. You can start now. Who knows, God will call you in 5 years, but why don't you just start learning Mandarin or, I don't know, what kind of other language? I don't know why I said Mandarin. Somebody probably needed to hear that one. Fuzi. But do your homework, start doing things. I mean, and that creates open doors. So you can prepare yourself in lots of things already where you're at. Continue to journal. One of that one, yeah. I think one of the things that I found hard is to remember. I easily forget things. But God already spoke lots of things in my life. And He showed me many things. But if I don't write it down and go back to it, I just ignore it, or I'm asking again. And God might say, well, I already told you that one. I want you to go back to it. So write things down. Make sure you remember what God has been speaking to you. And lastly, I would just say pray about it. It's a journey together. God is actually more interested, I think, in the journey with you as a family than in the results. Because one day He will come, and He wants to use us. But He wants you to be on that journey. He said, okay, come on. Can you walk with me? I'm finishing off with the blessings, because I do think that being on a mission together as a family is actually a huge blessing. The first one is we're on a journey together. I think, well, I can speak for my family. It brought us as a family really close together. Just being in one room, cramped together in one hotel room, spending nights at different places, meeting lots of people. It just helps to build family life together. That's just one of the many blessings. I think it just so often we are, as a family, confronted with the differences and the challenges that you need to talk about. But why are we doing this? And then you have conversations, and all of a sudden you realize, wait, we are in it together. The second thing is that you're actually living out your faith. In Hebrews 11:14 says, we are foreigners in this world. Now, I know that often, planting churches in a different culture is a choice that some can make. Some people don't even have the choice, and they are refugees. They need to be moved. But I think the reality is that every Christian is a foreigner in this world. So therefore, I think just living it out by being in a different culture actually helps to express that thing, or to articulate, hey, but we are foreigners. We are not meant to be staying here on earth. We are on our way to a heaven where there is a new earth, and then everything will be right. And until then, we are foreigners here in this world. Often, spiritual growth occurs in hardship. I just recently read a really nice quote. It said, it doesn't take a spiritual giant to become a missionary, but it's nearly impossible to remain spiritually dwarfed on the mission field. And I think there's a lot of truth in it. I don't think that it needs a lot of, you don't need to be a giant. I'm not, well, I'm tall, but I'm definitely not a giant. But what we can do is we learn a lot. I remember one of the things, do I still have time? One more story? I think so. I remember, I remember one day we were driving back from Indonesia to Malaysia, because every 2 months we had to do a visa run. And like I told you, the roads over there, they were just bad. We had a four-wheel drive, that's what we needed, but we were coming up one hill, and as we were driving up, our car just broke down, completely died. And we were sitting there with a family of 5, and our car broke down, so I was able to stop it. And then I got out, I realized we need help. This car needs to be towed or something like that. So I reached out for my phone, no signal, nothing. I looked around, no cars, nobody was passing by. So we were waiting there for an hour, and nobody came by. And we were sitting there with the family. I think that the youngest was not even a year old. And we were sitting there getting really desperate. So in the end, I went out of the car, and and then a car came, but he was going in the wrong direction. But I just stopped him. I said, I need your help. I need to go to a place where they can fix my car. So luckily for me, that car, I said, okay, I'll bring you. So I got into the car, and he drove me half an hour backwards to a place, to a garage. Is that how you call it? Yeah. But I had to leave my kids. I had to leave my wife over there in the car. No signal, not able to reach them. So it took me more than an hour and a half to come back. By that time, darkness was already there. At 6 o'clock straight, it's just pitch dark, and she was standing there with the car all by herself. And I remember coming back with her, with the car from the garage, and we arrived over there, and I saw my wife standing outside, and she was crying. The water was just gone. It was left. She didn't know when I was arriving back, and she was desperate. But she was standing outside the car, crying to God, Lord, let my husband come back right now. And in those moments, that's when you realize, actually, but prayer works. We need God to intervene. We need to see God at work. And I think those moments in hardship, that's where you actually see God at work. That's when we desperately cry out, Lord, now we need your help. So I think being out there is actually helping to build our faith. Lastly, I think that moving away as a family actually realizes us that we are part of a bigger family. God's church is so much bigger than what we can see. I think, look at this. Look around and just see family. We are churches of family on a mission. And I think that what I realized is if we take our family on that mission, we realize, wait, God's church is so much bigger. There's so much more people who needs to join this universal church. So my family, the bigger family of churches, we have a mission. We need to reach the nations. Why don't you join? Why don't you join? Why don't you just start asking God, what about my family? What is our purpose for my family here in Dubai, in the places where you live? Or maybe you are at that point that you say, hey, I need to reach my hand and I need to ask God, do you want us to move? Do you want us to be in a different place? I think it's just a great journey. And I just want to encourage you all to step out and to be a family on a mission. Amen? I've got 10 minutes. So, more stories. Are there any questions? Are there things that you would like to, I don't know, or, yeah? There's a mic here. Over there is a question. Is there some water, maybe?
So my question has to do with how you were financing your movement and taking care of the education of the children. Thank you.
That's a very good question. Finances. Yeah. We are at the beginning of the journey, so if you ask me in a couple of years, then I can answer you fully where it all came from. But one of the things I think is this. We're family. So I do believe that first and foremost, it's your own family, and sometimes that means tent making. Sometimes it means you can go to places and find jobs and start from their churches. Other times, I think it needs finance from your home church. And I know it's a different story in every different context. But that's why I think you need to pray into and look at the situation and talk with your apostolic oversight. Say, how can we see this happening? How can we see this family move to one place to another place? And I think for the rest of the people here as well, I think we need to realize that if we think that we need to reach the unreached, I think we probably need to think about it that it will cost. It comes with a cost. But also maybe from people who are living in places where they have resources, maybe that's their calling to make sure that other people can move even further and further and further. So there's no one answer, I think. But I think talk about it, have open conversations about it, pray about it, and invite other families and family of churches to join. So when we were in Indonesia, how we did finances? So when we were living in Indonesia, what we did with finances is we raised our own support, so it was completely faith-based. So it was families, churches, and we had a few churches supporting us, but it was mainly friends, other people who invested in us. And we were part of a larger, by that time it was a mission agency, but we could throw out that news of, hey, we are on a mission. So when that car broke down, for example, we had to go to the town, but we could not return because our car was just like completely blown up. We said that to our friends and to churches that we knew, and within a couple of days there was enough money for a new car. So, but sometimes these things happen this way, and sometimes it's a longer journey. But I think being a family of churches just helps. Being there for one another, I think, is one of the key things from Regions Beyond. So, does that answer your question? Any other questions?
Yes. Hi, Javi, here in the back.
Where did that came from?
The guy with the pink hoodie.
Oh yeah,
The Mexican guy.
yeah.
You see me? I'm coming off tall too, so. Okay, I just have one question. If you want, shortly, what was so far your biggest giant to face, and how did you face it?
What was my biggest, sorry?
Your biggest challenge or fear or giant, and how do you face it?
Ooh.
Thank you.
What
Love
was
you.
the biggest giant? I can think of a couple. I had quite a few challenges. We had a few challenges. I think one of the things, my wife, let me do one that I think my wife would tell that was the biggest. There was one time I got dengue, which is in the tropics quite a common thing. It's a mosquito bite, and then you get very tired. And you can get it, actually, there are 4 types. So I had it already 2 times. So the 3rd time I got it really badly, and I ended up in the hospital. And right about that time, we heard another story of a guy who had the exact same thing a year ago, and in the hospital he got an infection, and within a week he passed away. He was a missionary. So we heard that news. I went into the hospital. I was seriously ill. And I think for my wife, and just being there and seeing me and hearing that story, because I was in the hospital and then they told me I have an infection. So I had an infection. That altogether just made her really cry out to God, like, we need a miracle. I was too sick at the beginning, but when I became better finally, I realized it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. And I don't know what the cost exactly will be, but I do know that if we are called to do this, I think that we need to go with it. But just going through those things actually makes you realize it's not nothing. Being rushed back, where we lived 12 hours from the hospital, with my kid back to the hospital, those trips I do remember. So those are the 2 things I can think of right now that would really, challenge you. But then it comes back also to calling. It comes back to, but do we trust God? That's where the point of, hey, but there is fear. It's real. But do I trust God to help us through this thing? So. I've got still 6 minutes left, so how do we have over there?
Lucky you have your family backing you. This morning, I think Steve read for us Mark, when he said, they told Jesus his mother and brothers are outside calling him.
Yeah.
And he looked around and said, who am I? Who is my mother? Who are my brothers?
Yeah.
And he said, you around me. And he also mentioned some time ago that in the scriptures that we need to pay a cost. You need to forsake your mothers, forsake your father, forsake your brothers and family, all that. When it comes to that kind of a situation where there is that not agreement between you and your family to go on a mission, to obey the call of God on your life, how do you handle such a situation?
Good question. Very good question. Actually, I heard Steve Oliver talking this morning, and I thought to myself, don't quote that scripture, because it is a difficult one. I'm talking about family. Two things. The first one, I think Jesus, and the Bible talks about that whole thing, because he wanted to show us that actually family is important, because otherwise he wouldn't talk about family. So I think he was pointing out, and he was acting out, that if we would see other people as family, but we still need to see them as family. Do you understand? So I think it just points also to the importance of family. But then Jesus said, but your family is actually, we have a wider family. So he draws you into the importance of family. So that's the first thing. The second thing, that's a very personal and a very intimate question what you're asking, because I think that you need to wrestle that as a family. I would say I'm a bit cautious. How can I put it this way? I think you are part of a nuclear family. So husband, wife, kids, and as long as they're in one thing, I think you're accountable to one another to help one another to grow, to become more like Jesus. So if that's your calling, that is your calling as a parent and as a husband or wife. So you need to take that into account, I think. But there are choices that will have friction. And then you need to wrestle it together as a family. Hey, can we do this? What do we think that God is asking us to do? So even right now, yesterday I got a call from my wife. My youngest daughter, she was a bit upset, and she misses me a lot when I'm not there. So I was on the phone talking, video calling with them. And that's just, this is just a minor thing, but it comes with a cost. So these things happen all the time, and sometimes God asked us to make big sacrifices. But I believe it needs to be done within the family in agreement, where you can say, okay, if this is for this season, then we can carry it. But then God also can give you the strength to go through it together as a family. I don't think that we should break. If things fall apart, I think everything falls apart. And that will be my biggest worry. So if we take our family on the mission, it slows us down every now and then, but I think in the end it also helps us to go further. That would be my answer. Sorry? 10-minute break. Let's have a 10-minute break. Thank you so much, and we'll see you back for Tony and leadership, isn't it? Yep. Great. Thank you.